Welcome to the Totten Talks podcast, the show where we share lifting legacies and life lessons. I'm your host, Leo Totten.
And I'm Cait Finn.
And combined, we have over 70 years experience in the world of weightlifting, strength and conditioning, coaching, and sports performance at all levels.
This isn't just another lifting podcast. This is the place for legendary stories, corny dad jokes, and a peek behind the curtain to see what it takes to build the legacy Leo is still growing to this day. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Hi, Leo.
Well, hello, Cait. How are you? How was your Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving was great. We hosted lots of people, but all good. Good to have family down. But I was also
we had
ready.
off on Thursday while the kids went to their significant others, so it was just Patty and me, and then
Nice.
Friday, that's when the chaos was.
Oh,
But it's a
well,
good chaos. It's a fun chaos, for
Did you-
sure.
all the grandkids there?
Oh, yeah. Everybody made it.
Yeah.
Patty's famous lasagna. No
Famous-
turkey, famous
I still haven't
lasagna.
tried it yet. I got to get over there to try it.
That is a tradition. I've been to Italy twice now, and I've tried lasagna in Italy. Patty's got them. I'm sorry.
That's saying something.
That is saying something for sure. Of course, I'm a little biased too, but
A
still.
little biased. Just a little.
Just a bit, yeah.
Oh, Patty, if only Patty knew she was on our podcast.
I know. I'll let her know. I'll let her watch the podcast.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have a fun, exciting episode and topic for today. We are talking all about your Olympic experiences. And before we dive into that, though, I feel like it's important that we talk a little bit about like current day Olympics. And, you know, we just came off of the 2024 Olympics, and I would love to hear kind of your thoughts around the last couple rounds of the Olympics.
First of all, very proud of this year, the 2024 Olympic team for the United States. So good. I mean, it was just so nice to see, we're right up there now. Where before it was a struggle. Now we're competing. We're getting a gold medal. We're getting a bronze medal. We're getting higher placings. It was just really good to see that. And it was really good to see that this year's Olympians got to experience everything. Yeah. They were there from the beginning to the end. I mean, I think was that 14 days or something like that. So they got to experience all of the things that the Olympics have to offer besides the competition.
Sure.
And this is where I was really happy for them, but I felt bad for our 2020/2021 Olympians that because of COVID, they were kind of limited in how much they could do, and they got to compete, and that's a great honor, and it's a great environment. But I felt bad that they didn't get all of the festivities and the sideline things that a lot of people kind of take for granted, but that's a big part of the experience. So great lifting, great lifters, but I really wish for them that they could have had a little bit more of that experience.
That's been really neat to watch. We can all have a love-hate relationship with social media and the online world, but it was so fun, especially this 2024 round, having been around now for a handful of Olympics on the periphery. It was fun to just like see them experience it, right? Through social media, through reels, through stories, watching them get to teach Snoop Dogg how to weightlift and like just have all those experiences and represent our sport like front and center, which I feel like hasn't always been the case for our sport at the Olympic level. And so to really just see all the work that's gone in over the last 20 years to like bring our sport up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And now they get to experience that and be, the faces of our sport for this quad, and how fun and exciting it was to kind of live vicariously through them.
Well, and just the added exposure to USA weightlifting, more and more people came up to me afterwards. Well, did you see this or did you see that? And that doesn't always happen because it's not on TV, but we had more and more television coverage, and our athletes were so good representing the United States. So it's just nice for that exposure for USA weightlifting.
For sure. For sure. And, it's fun because for all of our like non-weightlifting listeners, maybe our strength and conditioning professional, stuff like that, I know you and I both, when we teach our courses, or the USAW courses, we spent a little bit of time in the beginning talking about language. And, our sport is weightlifting with a capital W, but in the US especially, it often gets called Olympic lifting because it is the only barbell sport in the Olympics. And so it's just been really neat to see that growth and evolution and all of those pieces, and to see more and more people exposed to it that, when they hear weightlifting, they ask you how much you bench. And that's not our
Yeah.
sport, right? So awesome.
Or I get, oh, are you that powerlifting guy? And I'm like, kinda. And then I have to explain about the two different sports, but how ours is a power sport.
Yeah,
It's a lot goes into that, but
into it.
slowly
And
changing, slowly changing.
slowly changing with more and more exposure. So today, though, we want to focus in on your two Olympic experiences. And so we want to talk about the 1996 Atlanta Olympics and then the 2004 Athens Olympics. We'll take it chronologically. Let's start with the Atlanta Olympics. Tell
Well,
us a little bit about that.
how about if we start even before that? A lot of people don't know, as far as an Olympic experience, in 1984 was one of the times when I was selected to work with ABC, who was covering the Olympics. Maybe you didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
I see that surprised look on your face.
It did
It was
surprise
really
me.
cool. My job was what they called a researcher. And what I
Okay.
did was I worked with Bruce Wilhelm. He was the main speaker. And also Lynn Swan, the all-pro Steeler wide receiver from back in the
Yeah.
day. He was part of the broadcast too. My job was to make him look like he knew what weightlifting was all about. So I kept feeding him all this information, and working with Bruce Wilhelm was just an awesome experience. So
Yeah.
that was actually my first experience with the
So that was the
Olympics.
84
That was
Olympics.
84. That was the
Okay.
last, that the Olympic trials was my last competition.
Yeah.
Speaking of Olympic trials, I got a bone to pick with weightlifting in general.
Oh, here we go.
It was really cool. I can say, and there's a lot of other lifters out there from the day, I can say that I competed in two Olympic trials.
It's a big
Okay.
deal.
And it is a big deal in 1980 and 1984.
Yeah.
But the problem is that now they don't have Olympic trials anymore.
Yeah.
And they only have a handful of athletes who can actually make the Olympic team. So
Right.
there's a lot of those athletes that are right up there, so close to qualifying, but not quite. They can't even say they competed in an Olympic trials.
Right.
I'd
Right.
really love to see that come back so that
Yeah.
more and more athletes can say, hey, I didn't make the Olympics, but I made two Olympic trials. Because when you look at a lot of television coverage, big deal for the Olympic trials, for track and
Absolutely.
field, for swimming,
Yeah. All of
and
it.
our athletes don't get that.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see that come back. I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but the
Oh,
system that it's set up now, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. But
yeah.
maybe there's change in the future. Hopefully.
The only thing constant is change, right?
Yep, exactly. All
All
right.
right. So
Well,
going back to 96.
96 Olympics was a great experience. It was my first. I was the team leader. Dragomir Soroslin was the head coach.
Can you tell our listeners what that means? Because I think that it's important to really distinguish between like the team leader, the head coach, all of that. And a lot of our listeners may not understand those differences.
I think that's a pretty important point, yes. Well, Dragomir Soroslin was the head coach.
Okay.
Dennis Sneathen was the assistant coach, and I was the team leader. And the team
Okay.
leader, and those roles have changed a little bit
Yeah.
over the years, but back then the team leader had a pretty important role. Obviously, he had to take care of all the logistics, making sure that everybody got where they needed to go, making sure they got to the meals on time, the hotels, the training halls. But one of the big parts of that at the time was kind of like an assistant coach as well.
Sure.
So a lot of times somebody would be at a competition, but somebody who was going to compete later on had to go to training. I would go to the training with them. I really had a pretty much of an assistant coach role, but the team leader was exactly what that term said, led the team. Just a wonderful experience. And
Okay.
anything we can do to help
Just
the
the men's
athlete.
team at this point still?
I'm sorry?
It was still just the men's team, correct? In 96?
Well, in 96, yeah. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about as well. So we had 10 athletes that competed, and I could go over each one of them, but a couple that kind of stood out. Everybody remembers Mark Henry. he really stood out. I mean, when you're 6'3" and 400 pounds, you tend to stand out a little bit.
Sure.
Plus, he was the nicest guy and great sponsor for weightlifting in general. I mean, he was Mr. Everything. Oh, he'd pick up kids and take pictures with the kids and stuff. He was just a great sponsor, I guess would be the word for weightlifting in general. And
Sure.
such a really strong dude.
Yeah.
And I felt bad for him because of his personality and his whole persona, he was touted as, oh, he's going to be a medalist. He's going to win this. His picture was in Sports Illustrated that he's going to do this or that. I felt bad for him because realistically, he wasn't in medal contention. So there was a lot of extra pressure, a lot
Wow.
of media attention. I
Yeah.
mean, and trust me, he loves that. He eats that up. But at the same time, it was not fair to him. And
Yeah.
he lifted
That's
very well, didn't do as well as he wanted to. He said he hurt his back, and I think he did. But somehow that evening, when he was done competing, he and I managed to go to a dance club, and I saw him dancing a little bit. So his back wasn't as bad. Well, it's one thing to dance with a bad back. It's another thing to try to lift a heavy weight with a
fair.
bad
That
back.
is a fair
Uh,
distinction.
and Brian Jacob, great guy. I really love Brian. Well, anyway, he was one of John Coffey's lifters, and
Okay.
anybody who is familiar with John just recently
That's
passed away, and one of the best
legend.
coaches around. I tell you, really,
Yeah.
really good guy.
Legend.
But anyway, his lifters, as far as nutrition was concerned, not exactly what you recommend. Okay, after weigh-ins, they would eat like Burger King and Whoppers and McDonald's and it's like and fries. Not exactly what most people do, but anyway, at this particular Olympics, he lifted at I think it was like 11 o'clock in the morning. So my job again, what I try to do is I try to take all the details out of things as a team
Right.
leader. Take all the
Sure.
details out so all the coaches and lifters can do their thing. They don't have to
Lift.
worry
Yeah.
about any of the other stuff. He wanted a Whopper. 11 o'clock in the morning is when he lifted. So that means he weighed in at 9. Therefore, I was running all over the place trying to find a Whopper for this guy. I finally knocking on doors and got the Burger King to open, and they made it special for me, and I ran it back to him. So just little things like that, just
Yeah.
kind of pop in your head there.
So to that big experience with the athletes, big experience with the coaches, but there's a couple other memorable experiences that happened that year. Can you tell us about a couple of those stories of kind of your big memorable?
I can start right off with the opening ceremonies. They have to house all the athletes somewhere to have them for the big march in, right?
Sure.
So in Atlanta at the time, they had a new stadium that was like right across the street from the old stadium. So they bussed everybody in from all the different countries into the old stadium, got them all prepared there and everything, and then one country at a time crossed the street, and it wasn't a major street, it was kind of like an alley almost, and then walk into the new stadium. There's a little bit of a ramp, and then you come down the ramp into the stadium. I will never forget that. I mean, that was goosebump time. We walked up the ramp and started coming down, and I'm like, it literally took my breath away. And
Wow.
I think I floated down the ramp. I don't think I walked down the ramp at all. Seeing all these lights flashing and all the noise and all the other teams have already been there. And then we're walking around the track, and I'm just like, I was just a kid in a candy store, man. I tell you. And
Wow.
then we got to see the dream team, the basketball team down on
Yep.
the field. We
Yep.
saw they brought in the Olympic flag and some of the athletes from the past, Edwin Moses and some of those guys, and the Olympic gold medalists. They're bringing the flag. It was just an amazing experience. I mean, it was one of those things that you just never forget. Do you remember the bombing at the Olympic Park?
Oh yeah.
Here's
Yeah.
another story. It was me and then 5 or 6 other of our athletes. We happened to be at the Olympic Park that evening, and we came home, and about 10 minutes later, after I got home, I got a phone call saying, "Is everybody okay?" I said, "Well, yeah, everybody's here and everybody's in bed." And then they said about the bombing had happened. So we had left maybe
Wow.
20 minutes before that happened.
Wow.
So it was just one of those experiences that it was just, you kind of hold your breath when things are that close. And of
Wow.
course, the competition itself.
Sure.
I
There's always a
mean,
favorite. There's always a battle. Who was the battle that year?
the battle that year that I remember more than anything was Piros Demos. In
Mm.
fact, he has a story from the 2004 one too when we get to that one. But
Yes.
he was battling Mark Hooster at the time.
Okay.
And we all know how efficient Piros was. That was his second Olympic gold medal that he got. Well, anyway, he, I think, made 5 or 6 out of 6, but yet he was really pushed by Mark Hooster. Mark Hooster did a world record clean and jerk. I think it was like 413 at the time. And this was in the 83 kilo class.
Which different weight classes back then.
Piros
Yeah.
came back and made that. So it was just an outstanding competition to see that. And then I remember the supers also. Chemurkin from the Soviet Union, I guess it was Russia. Anyway, Ronnie Weller, he was right up there and from Germany, and he had the win. As a matter of fact, he even, after his last clean and jerk, now Chemurkin still had one to go. After his last clean and jerk, he was going to retire, put his shoes on the platform, and then Chemurkin comes out, makes I don't know if it was world record at the time, but enough for the gold medal, an obvious press out, and got 3 white lights and won the gold medal because of that. So there was some controversy, but at the same time, man, that's some really, really good lifting. There were so many different experiences. I could go on and on and on, but
not many people can talk about these experiences, so it's neat to hear
yeah.
someone who has been through it, not once, but twice. Now, you didn't do the 2000 Olympics, but you did do the 2004 Olympics. So can you tell us a little bit about that experience, which was in Athens?
Yeah, that was Athens. And the 2000 Olympics, as everybody in the world of weightlifting know, finally they had women in there. It took a long time, but we finally, and the United States was a big proponent of women's weightlifting back in the 80s, and they were pushing like crazy to get them finally to the Olympics.
Now, women had been lifting internationally for years and years competitively.
Yeah, U.S. was a big proponent of that. They pushed that a lot.
Yep.
Finally, in 2000, and the United States did pretty well.
Yeah.
Tara Knott got a gold. Cheryl Hayworth got a bronze. We started off on the right foot there. I wish I could have been there, and it was in Sydney. And funny because Robin Goad was there. She named her first child Sydney.
Oh,
that has significance, I would say.
yeah.
So it started a really good trend. But the only problem is that when the IOC decided to put together letting women weightlifting in, they said, okay, we're going to have to cut down the slots. Remember how we had 10 men in Atlanta? Well, when they brought the women in, they said, well, what that means is instead of having 10 men and I think it was 7 women at the time, instead of 10 and 10, they said, well, instead of 17 lifters, we're only going to have a total of 10. So what that means is that you can still have your 10, but now you got to divide it between men and women. So you might be an unequal man to woman ratio or woman to man, either way. But either way, we weren't having full teams anymore. So that is one of the negatives behind it, but still, we were just so glad to get women into the weightlifting. Then by 2004, they were pretty much entrenched into the sport. And again, we were just so proud to have the 5 lifters that we had. And Tara Knott made that team again. Cheryl made that team again. And then we had 3 men. We had Chad Vaughn, we had Shane Hammond, and we had Oscar Chaplin. May rest in peace.
Names.
Oscar's
if you don't know those names, learn your weightlifting history.
That's for sure. Just an interesting note about Tara's weight class in the smallest weight class. And to be honest, they switched classes around, and I even forget what it was. I think it was
48. I believe it was 48 kilos.
48, I believe, back then. But anyway, so Tara was done competing, and so I'm still in the warm-up room watching the Turkish girl and the Chinese girl battle it out for the gold. Well, the Chinese girl, I saw her do 105 4 times. Then she did 110 twice. Then she opened at 112. And I'm thinking, that doesn't sound like very good coaching to me.
Wild.
Yeah. And the Turkish girl was a lot smarter in her warm-up attempts and how she did it. And she ended up winning the gold. And the Chinese girl opened at 112, really struggled. Of course, then again, she'd already done 6 lifts, 95% and above. So I guess you're going to be a little tired. Chances are they probably cut a little bit of weight too. So I know they train hard and they're used to a lot of volume, but that seemed extreme to me. So anyway, she made 112 and then needed 120 for the win, and she missed it twice both times. So just you never know. And speaking of battles, this one was my favorite. Again, going back to Piros. And Oscar Chaplin had lifted in the B session that day, so we were working with him. And then for the A session, we knew we had to watch this one because this was Piros Demos's fourth attempt at a gold medal. He already won 3 gold medals in 3 Olympics. This
Right.
would have been unprecedented, 4 gold medals. So Gail Hatch, the head coach, and I were sitting in the audience watching this. Unbelievable. You remember that Piros was Greek, right? And this was
Yeah.
in Athens.
Yeah.
He was like a god. I mean,
Yeah.
you saw his face on posters, on
Yeah.
magazine covers, on newspapers. He was a god. Well, the place was packed. I
Oh,
mean, packed. They even had a huge audience outside with big TV set up. He was a hero, remember? So
yeah.
anyway, makes his lift and he's shooting for that fourth gold medal. He has the gold medal clean jerk above his head, just misses it. I mean, it was so
Remember
close.
that.
So he ends up getting the bronze, and I always kind of tease, only the bronze, right?
Only the
It's still a
bronze. Right.
bronze is a big
Right.
deal,
Right.
right? So 3 golds and a bronze is still a pretty
Yeah.
effective lifetime of lifting for sure.
Sure. Pretty
So
nice legacy.
anyway, the thing I
Yeah.
really remember is when the victory stand came out, and the first, second, and third place guy came out, and they're standing behind where it needs to be, and they announced bronze medal first. The place went crazy. I mean, literally 15 minutes of cheering and clapping,
That's
and
cool. Yeah.
I had goosebumps. I mean, kind of like
Yeah.
kind of like the opening ceremony for
Yeah.
the Olympics in
Yeah.
'96. I had goosebumps. It was unbelievable. They just wouldn't stop, and
Yeah.
you could see he had his hand on his heart, and I felt bad for the gold medal guy and silver medal. They're going, "Hey, wait a minute, we just beat this guy. Give us a little credit too." That was just an unbelievable experience,
Yeah.
and the whole experience of that Olympics. I even put together a little PowerPoint presentation with it. We'll have to share sometime. But what I noticed was that as soon as I got there, now this was right after, only 3 years after 9/11.
Everything's
Security
changed.
was
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
You look up in the sky and it's empty. There's
Yeah.
no air traffic. The only thing you see is this security blimp
Yep.
slowly going around. That was it. And security was just so tight. I was a little worried about it,
Sure.
because, just being United States people and,
Yeah.
we're in a
Yeah.
land where there's a lot of opportunity for
The bombing in
uh,
'96, you had
ex-
9/11, so, like, there's a
exactly.
lot going on.
Exactly.
Yep.
So the housing that we stayed in, I thought was kind of interesting, where they had individual houses for teams in the U.S. area of
Oh,
the Olympic Village.
oh,
So
interesting.
we walk into the house, and on the left side were the men gymnasts, and on the right side was the women gymnasts. Go up the stairs, and on the left side was weightlifters, and on the right side, security. There was a whole room and outfit just for
Interesting.
security. Well, I got to know the guys pretty good, so they actually let me walk in and look around. I'm going, I mean, it was an arsenal. I'm going, you know what? I think I'm feeling pretty safe where I'm staying right now. It's not too bad.
Wow.
So yeah, it was just crazy. The security, they did an outstanding job with that for sure.
Yeah.
The opening ceremonies were awesome. Okay,
Okay.
not as awesome as the first one, just because it
Okay.
was in Atlanta and it was, but it was
Yeah, that makes
still.
sense.
I mean, just to walk around and see the other athletes and the pomp and circumstance and a lot of standing around. Okay, but
Not
the
hurry up and
time
wait.
time ends up going so fast. We stuck around for the closing ceremonies, which was really cool. I got pictures with Michael Phelps. I got pictures with Cale Sanderson, wrestling coach at Penn State now, who
Yeah,
was a gold
yeah.
medalist there. Got to meet their whole team because I have a lot of wrestling background, so it was cool to meet up with those guys. So the closing ceremonies was just a big party, and everybody handled it very well, and it was really cool. One of those things that I always find intriguing is the food. I know that sounds kind of weird, but
What
whenever
everybody's
you
always
go,
talking about. What's the food like?
well, whenever you go to the Olympics, they go out of their way to make sure that the cafeteria, it's always a huge cafeteria, and a lot of times they have other smaller places off to the side, but the big cafeteria, they will literally have Japanese, Chinese, Thai, American. You know what the biggest lines always were? McDonald's. I mean, everybody from every country, United States
Oh,
included, and it's
wild!
At the McDonald's, you would think, I mean, here I'm trying all these exotic things and just try.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Everybody else is
there
not.
and everything was so good, but the biggest lines were at McDonald's and you would think the nutrition would be a pretty important part of what they do, but evidently not so much. But
Yeah.
it was just a wonderful experience and got to meet a lot of great people. The cool thing is at the end, we got to visit the White House. And so we got a tour of the White House. I got to meet President Bush at the time and Mrs. Bush. And I have a picture of me. And I think Cheryl Hayworth got a picture of herself doing this too. I got to ask her about that. A picture standing at the podium with the presidential emblem on the front
Yeah.
and me standing there, the President of the United States. Hey, the United States is in good hands now. It'll be peace and
Leo
love
Totten
for
at the
everybody. Nobody
helm.
has any worries to concern themselves with.
These are
Um,
great stories, Leo. I mean, it's so interesting to me, even as someone who's been in the sport almost 15 years now. I feel like there's even so much lost from like my early days of weightlifting for newer people in the sport, right? Newer people that are just coming on the scene, in the last couple of years, last 5 years. There's so much stories and experiences that people don't know, right? And these are two prime examples of it. And you said names that like I kind of grew up listening to in the world of weightlifting, but I bet there's people listening right now that haven't heard of some of our 96 and 2000 and 2004 Olympians. And that's really sad. And so my hope, and this is a big part of why we started this podcast, one of the reasons, but my hope is that people listening to this podcast and new in the sport really take the time to ask questions, learn the history, learn about things, because there's just so much there. There's so much there.
and that's one of the reasons I like to share because I have
Yeah,
been around for a long time and I have
yeah,
experienced a lot of different things. A lot of the guys I still hang out with at
yeah.
especially the national events, Jim Schmitz, Dennis Reno, these guys, we've been around for a long time and you can learn a lot. The
Learned
younger
so much.
lifters and athletes, they can learn a lot from the experiences in the past. And one of the things we talk about with our mentorship program is that
Yep,
the reason we try to do that to help coaches is that along the way, we've struggled with some things when we were
yep,
growing up and first getting started and had a lot of mentors along the way, learned a lot of stuff. Well, now the things that we have learned, we want to share, we want to pay it forward. And you can learn from that and learn from things not to do as well
yep,
as things that you should be doing.
yeah,
And I know we always talk about old school but old school has a lot to offer and just because something is new and dazzling doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing out there.
sure.
Just because somebody
New shiny
markets
thing.
themselves very well or talks about things and pumps it up, there's a lot of crap out there. There's a
Sure
lot
it
of really
is.
good stuff, but there's a lot
Oh,
of
that's
really good
good.
information and we try to help people along the way so that they can use this information and some of the stuff is just interesting and not necessarily applicable. A
Yeah.
lot of it is really applicable to what that you do today, and just you learn from everything that you can.
I love it. Well, I will say to everyone listening too, Leo's talked about some really great stories today, and he mentioned the PowerPoint that he's done, and a lot of the pictures that are in that we have posted both on our Instagram and Facebook, which is at Totten Training, that's the handle, and on Leo's blog on our website, tottentraining.com. A lot of them have been a part of our Totten Training throwback series. Every Thursday for years and years now, we have posted a throwback to something in Leo's world, weightlifting, coaching, all the things. And a lot of those pictures are up there of the 96 team, the 2004 team. Some of these fun memories and stories are up there as well. So we really encourage you to follow us on social media. If you don't already, head to the website, check out the blog. You can even click in the blog right on throwbacks and it'll sort all the posts out. So you can just peruse through the pictures. There's always a little story with each picture. It's a great way to kind of learn and stay connected to the history of this really beautiful sport.
Well, and then too, I offer to anyone that, when you check out the Tottenisms that we do on Tuesday and the throwbacks that we do on Thursday, any of the podcasts that we do, anytime you have any questions on anything, feel
Yeah,
free to check with me. Let me know. And if you have any questions on anything, or if you want to go into more detail on some things, just let me know. I mean, I'm available on my website, on my email. My email is really easy. It's Leo at tottentraining.com. I did that easy one so I could remember it.
You wouldn't forget.
Exactly.
All right, Leo. Well, as always, it's great chatting. And even I have known you for close to 15 years now, and even I learned some new things about you. So thank you so much. It's always an honor to be in your presence.
I'm humbled to be in your presence. Trust me, I just love hanging out with good quality people, and I always say that, and you're one of those quality people for sure.
Good company.
Yeah, that's right. That makes a big
All right.
difference. All right. Thanks,
Thanks,
Cait.
everyone. Thank you for listening to the Totten Talks podcast, Lifting Legacies and Life Lessons.
We hope our discussions have been useful.
And you've had a little fun.
We would love to hear from our listeners. Leave a review and rating. Now go lift, learn, and build your own legacy.